Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this afternoon's Plan and Environmental Protection Committee. Just a few house rules, just really for those that are visiting, that should the fire alarms go off, although we're not expecting any, then make your way through the nearest fire exit and proceed to the Cathedral Concourse. Okay? Thank you. For those watching and joining us online, welcome. Today, my name's Chris Harper. I'm the chair of this committee. I'm joined by a cross-party group of councillors and officers and member services supporting me for determining the cases before us. First item then is item 1, apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. We do have apologies from Councillor Andrew Bond. Councillor Sandra Bond is in attendance as substitute.
No, it wasn't, was it? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I wasn't
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bond, for standing in for Councillor Bond. Thank you. Item 2 then is declarations of interest. None of those. Item 3 is declaration to make representation as a ward councillor.
Just on the last one, is myself and Councillor Iqbal are ward councillors, but we've not had any, we're not prejudiced in any way, so.
Okay, good. Thanks for making that clear. So back to item 3 then, declaration to make representations as a ward councillor. No. Great, thank you very much. Item 4 then is for the minutes of the previous meetings. Could I ask members, please, regarding the 18th of October 2022 meeting, are you happy that these are a true account? Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Hill, and a seconder, Councillor Jamil. And for the 15th of November 2022, proposed by Councillor Hill again, and seconded by Councillor Jamil. All okay with that? All agreed? Perfect. Thank you. Item 5 then is development control and enforcement matters. Item 5.1 relates to the regional swimming pool car park, Bishops Road, Eastgate. And I'll pass this over to Mr. Phil Moore to introduce the item. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Phil Moore. I'm Development Management Team Leader here at Peterborough, and I will be presenting this application to you this afternoon. I'm also joined by my colleague, Matt Thompson, who is the case officer, as well as Asif Ali, who's also been dealing with the university applications. And between us, as well as our highways colleagues, I think we should be able to answer any questions that you might have following the presentation. So this application is phase 3 of the new Peterborough University. It's a new 2-storey building, together with associated parking, infrastructure and landscaping. On the location plan here, outlined in red, is the application site. That's the former car park to the regional pool, which is directed to the east. It's facing onto Bishops Road. You've got the cathedral, where my cursor is showing now, to the northwest, and you've got a number of sports facilities to the south here, together with the embankment itself further south. This is the first of the block plans. This one shows the site in its wider context, wider university context. So where my cursor is there, that is the main entrance to the university. Phase 1 here has already been built and has been open since September. Phase 2 is under construction. Now you've got the main entrance here, and you've got a route, central route through these two, phase 1 and phase 2, leading up to the phase 3 building, which is this rectangular shape here. You've also got proposed as a central square, which the building will wrap round. And the route that I described coming through here goes through the site and continues on to the regional pool and the embankment beyond. And then also to note as well, you've got the main vehicular entrance here, which is not part of the current application. That's already been built, which leads up to the parking area, which is part of the application. This is a slightly more zoomed in block plan. And just to point out on this one, obviously you can see the building here, which is an L shape, facing onto Bishop's Road this way and facing onto the central courtyard this way. It will be a landscaped site, so along the frontage here, there will be a couple of trees to be minor trees removed, but overall there will be an increase in the number of trees on the site. The central courtyard will be landscaped. And just to point out as well, the parking spaces are here, and there's a number of SUDS drainage features around the site as well, including a pond here and another pond here. When I say pond, they're not permanently wet, they're sort of depressions in the ground that can contain water as and when necessary to avoid flooding. So on to the elevational drawings. Now this one shows the Bishop's Road elevation. This is the new proposed building. As you can see, it's got a sawtooth roof facing onto Bishop's Road. This is phase one, the existing phase one building. And this is just to show the relationship between the two, very similar in scale and height. This is a zoomed in elevation facing Bishop's Road. Again, note the sawtooth roof detail. This is the east elevation, which in reality will be pretty much screened by trees. So it's not particularly visible, or it won't be particularly visible. This is the south-facing courtyard elevation. And that is the west-facing courtyard elevation. I think far more useful, I think, than the elevational drawings. This is a CGI image looking from the central courtyard, looking in a sort of northeast direction. And I'll just caveat this by saying that there has been a very slight amendment since this CGI was made, and we haven't got an updated version of it. The only difference being this element here is slightly smaller, whereas the linking element in the middle is slightly wider. That's the only difference. But this shows the kind of contemporary architecture that's proposed within its landscape setting. Similarly, this drawing, I think, illustrates the scale and massing and design of the building very well. And again, I'll caveat it by saying it's a very slightly changed since this drawing was done. This rectangular block here is slightly smaller, and that's the only difference really. So the main elements of the building, you've got this sawtoothed roof feature on the Bishop's Road side. You've got this more rectangular shaped element here, which is described as a beam in the quay. In the centre here, the main entrance to the building, which would have a green roof, as well as a video display on this part of the wall. And just to note as well, that video display will only be visible from within that courtyard, not from outside of the site. And then finally, you've got this rectangular or box-shaped element, which is described as the living lab, which is a large multi-use space. Onto the floor plans, the ground floor. So the colours here, the blue represents specialist teaching area. The orange represents social learning area. And the green area here is the living lab, which I described earlier as a large multi-use space. Then onto the first floor, the yellow is described as an academic workspace, the purple, generic teaching area, and the orange is a social learning area. So very quickly, I'll show you some photographs of the site. So this is the looking towards the main entrance of the university. with the existing phase 1, which is open to business already, just here, and in the background, phase 2, which is under construction. Now, this is looking from Bishop's Road onto phase 1. Now, the proposal in front of you today, phase 3, will be roughly where my cursor is showing now. Now, this one is a little bit further on. So just out of the picture on this side is phase 1. Phase 3 will be roughly in this space here. Looking back the other way towards phase 1, the main vehicular entrance to the site. Further east down Bishop's Road, phase 1 is this bit here. Phase 3 will be roughly where my cursor is showing. Now this is looking in a westerly direction with Bishop's Road, just turning a corner there. Phase 1 in the distance, phase 3 in this space here. And that's just showing you a space at towards the east end of the site. There's the row of trees here, which will effectively screen the eastern elevation of the building. Now this is looking east onto what will become the courtyard, the central courtyard. So the building will wrap around in an L shape around the courtyard there. And then again, there's that CGI image, which is taken from roughly the same spot as that. Now this is the central space between phases 1 and 2. Very well landscaped, high quality of landscaping. Now this is the route that will run through the centre of the site from the main entrance to the central square and then out the other side towards the regional pool. Another shot of that central area. Just to say as well that there's a lot of cycle parking areas already provided within the existing university campus. However, there will be a significant number of additional spaces, 80 spaces, I believe, in the new section. And then just very quickly onto our evaluation. So in principle, our local plan is very strongly supportive of a university campus on this site and in this location. So it is wholly acceptable in principle. In terms of the design, it's an appropriate contemporary response to the context, which complements phases 1 and 2 in terms of scale and mass, albeit in a slightly different style, which gives it a little bit more interest. It also continues the building line along Bishop's Road, which is important in the sense that it addresses that road and provides a good frontage. Cathedral is nearby, however, there's no harm to the setting of the cathedral. You'll note from the report there's been no objections from the Conservation Officer, Historic England, or the Civic Society. In terms of landscaping, what's proposed is of high quality, although it will be secured by condition. It'll also provide an ecological benefit, because at the moment you've got a sort of a car park area of hard standing, basically a sterile area with a few trees around the outside. There will be a loss of a couple of trees, which is necessary to enable this to happen. However, there will be significant new planting, and you'll have an overall biodiversity net gain. Drainage, it's acceptable in drainage terms. You've got an appropriate sud system, which will help to minimise flood risk. Highways, obviously this involves the loss of the existing car park for the regional pool. However, that will be compensated for by the recently approved temporary car park to the east of regional pool, which you may recall came to committee not very long ago. No objection in principle from the local highway authority, subject to appropriate mitigation to ensure that There's no adverse impact on traffic capacity in the area. That mitigation will more than likely be a financial contribution towards upgrades to the roads, junctions within the vicinity of Bishop's Road, Vineyard Road and St John's Street. Now that mitigation will be secured by Section 106 agreement, which will, there's a condition which we're recommending in the update paper, which requires that Section 106 to be entered into no later than slab level. And that allows construction to start before the 106 is finalised. And the 106 will be, the actual detailed mitigation measures will be agreed following some additional surveys and testing that we're requiring the applicant to do just to finalise what that mitigation will be. So, in conclusion, the recommendation is to approve, subject to conditions, including the additional condition in the update paper requiring a 106. And that's it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks very much, Phil. Okay, committee, we have one person registered to speak. Rob Riding, please, who's the agent. Rob, if you'd like to go on to one of the desks with a mic, just here somewhere. Pick which one you like, doesn't really matter. Mr. Riding, welcome. You'll have 5 minutes to address the committee when you're ready, once you press the mic, and we'll let you know when you've got 30 seconds left if you get into it. Okay?
Thank you, Chair and members, for allowing me the opportunity to speak as the agent in support of the proposed development. As you're fully aware, in September this year, the first teaching building at ARU Peterborough opened and welcomed its first students, and the second building is due to open in spring next year. The university campus is therefore an established part of the city, and this application represents the third phase, next stage of the campus that consists of a second teaching building alongside the first two phases. The Phase 3 building is planned to cater to students in the science, technology, engineering and maths fields, and as you've heard from the officers today, it will comprise a feature called the Living Lab, which will offer a space to engage and inspire the students, residents and also visitors to the city in science and technology. It will be open to the community as part of a pedestrian-friendly campus, and it also has the flexibility to host a variety of events, exhibitions, talks and classes. It's anticipated that the construction of this building will commence in spring next year and completed in time to welcome its students and the public in autumn 2024. The applicants worked hard with the officers prior to and during the consideration of the plan of the application to achieve a high quality development on an area of previously developed land, and it represents a real asset to the city and continue to realise the vision of the university here. This is reflected in your officer's report, where no objections have been received from any consultees and also minimal representations from local residents. The Phase 3 building will redevelop the existing regional pool car park, but the survey work to support the plan application has shown that there's sufficient capacity in the existing city centre car parks to accommodate the needs of the development. And furthermore, planning consent has recently been granted for to the east of the embankment for a temporary car park to serve the regional pool and the Phase 2 building. Development will encourage walking and cycling to the campus. You note that the officers said there's going to be a provision of 80 additional cycle spaces in addition to what's been provided already in phases 1 and 2. And it will provide a publicly accessible area to Phase 3 building continuing the approach established by the earlier phases to provide a safe, attractive and welcoming place. The building itself will be low in height and smaller in size to the previous phases, and it's been designed to complement the existing buildings on the campus. We therefore fully endorse your officer's recommendation for approval and respectfully request that planning permission is granted for the development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riding. Members, any questions, please? Mr. Riding? No, you got off easy, thank you. Oh, did you? Yes, sorry, Councillor Sharp, I saw your finger.
Yeah, just one very quick question. Sorry, can you hear me all right? Well, one quick question. It's page 11 of the main report. It refers to the additional highway works that are proposed as a condition. If I'm reading it right, it's referencing the need for further modellings and sensitivity testing from yourselves. At this stage, are you highlighting any issues off the back of that?
Not at this stage, no. It's just additional information that the local highway authority have requested, which will in time inform what the off-site highways mitigation will comprise. So they just need this additional modelling sensitivity testing to be undertaken, which will inform the discussions with them going forward and be secured in the Section 106 agreement.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sharp. Anybody else? Yes, Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Chair. There was a question at the site visit about bus stops. I think it was put forward by Councillor Sharp. Adding on from that, I just wanted to ask if there was any provision, because we've discussed it in the past about when we were looking at phase 1 and 2, about maybe a taxi rank provision. Considering the university is going to be linked to hopefully the bridge coming over from this, from the embankment, I'm guessing there's going to be more traffic and footfall. I know it was mentioned about designing it in a way that we promote walking and cycling, but as there's no sort of residential buildings being put in for students, I'm guessing students are going to come from further afield rather than just the local area. So there may be a need for taxis, etc. So is there any sort of consideration for that?
Not as part of this application. There is no intention to provide a taxi rank, or I don't think it would be the space or circulation space to be able to accommodate that within here. But it's something that that the applicant can certainly look at as part of the wider master plan for the university, which will be coming forward in an outline plan application and in the future.
Anybody else? Councillor Hiller.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the address. Very interesting. Purely from a matter, I guess, of public interest. Timescales, not a planning consideration at this juncture. I completely get that, but we are often asked as members, that's all very well, but when's it going to be built? So when do you envisage being on site proper, spades in the ground, so to speak, and when do you envisage a completion? Thanks.
Sure. So construction's due to start in spring next year, so you're looking at the contractor mobilising on site in April and spade in the ground in May, and the building will be completed in the summer of 2024, so you'll be welcoming its first students in September of that year.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay, lovely. Thank you very much, Mr. Wright. Thank you for your time. Okay. We don't have any other speakers on this one, so we're going to move now to questions to officers. Councillor Hogg.
Yes, just God, it's loud. Just a question vis-a-vis. So the previously the site had been earmarked, and I think planning permission was given for a multi-storey car park to go onto this site, and you referenced the temporary car parking that was going to be placed on the field to the other side of the regional pool to service that pool whilst the construction was in place. I think it's been clear from the investigations in terms of the car parking for the whole of the city, that maybe that car park isn't needed anymore. So this seems a much better use of the space. But you referenced the fact that something about the car parking that would be coming on board for the regional pool. Whilst yes, there are car parks within fairly close proximity. Obviously, not everybody has the mobility and the disabled parking that was on this site. So my question is, does the condition that was placed on the construction for the car park, is that placed on this as well to make sure that there is sufficient parking for the pool?
So the temporary car park comes under a different permission, which obviously came to committee several months ago, and I suppose it's all about timing, because this is only phase 3 of the university. It will go on to further phases, although the further phases will be covered by a master plan, which we don't have yet, but it's a work in progress, and that master plan will take into account all the entire needs of parking of the university as a whole. So when that comes forward, that will solve that problem. Does that answer your question? No.
No, unfortunately not. So the point I'm trying to make is that the permission that we gave before for that other site was temporary parking, whilst the parking was being constructed on this site. If we give permission for this, that is not going to happen. So that no longer becomes temporary car parking because it's not waiting for the new spaces to think. Don't get me wrong. I think I argued against it on the basis that we didn't need as many car parking spaces from the work that was done across the city for car parking. It suggested that we didn't need it. However, there is a need for disabled parking to service the swimming pool. So the point I'm trying to make is we need to have a solution for that. That hasn't gone away. And the car park that was going to be built here couldn't start construction until the temporary car park had been put in place. And what I'm asking is there going to be a similar condition for this site? Because essentially we will be removing disabled parking for the swimming pool. So until there is an alternative provision in place, we will not be doing our disabled citizens a service in terms of those that are using the regional pool.
Through you, Chair. Just to kind of expanding on Phil's answer, and somebody who is struggling with mobility issues myself, I can fully understand the desire to have disabled car parking to serve the pool. I think probably the best thing to do is to take a step back and strip it down in terms of how we've proceeded through the phases for phases 1, 2 and 3. So as part of phase 2, you'll remember that it was an outline and a full plans application. The full plans related to the phase 2 building, which has largely been built, the Innovation Centre, and then there was an outline planning application for a multi-storey car park on Bishop's Green. We then had a Section 73 variation of conditions application, which my colleague Asif handled, which was essentially we replaced the multi-storey car park on Bishop's Green with a temporary car park on land to the east of the regional pool. Now the temporary car park is going to provide 128 car parking spaces. The reason why it's 128 parking spaces, it was the inverted commas magic number that we needed to provide based on the studies and info that we had at the time to mitigate the parking requirement for phase 2, but also the loss of the regional pool car park, which phase 3 now sits on. So answering your question in terms of will a condition be attached to this permission for the temporary car park, the answer is no, and the reason being is that because phase 2's commenced, and the Section 73 is tied to that, there's a requirement to provide that permission, the temporary car park, in isolation. So that's being done by I think it's the CPCA, or I think it's the CPCA who are responsible for providing that temporary car park. And as part of that temporary car park, that would provide essentially, parking to serve not just the regional pool in terms of disabled parking, but parking as in the whole. As part of phase 3, and I will defer to obviously Jez, the highway officer, it's basically on the information that we've got, there's sufficient capacity within existing car parks within the area to take on phase 3, but obviously there would presumably without question be a provision of disabled parking spaces in the temporary car park that anybody could use, whether they're using the regional pool phases 1, 2 or 3. So, and there's also 4 disabled bays provided as part of phase 3. I think they're either electric charging bays or disabled bays as part of this one, as well as what would be provided in the temporary car park.
Sorry, I just need to push on this. So essentially what we're saying is that this is going on to what is currently the car park for the regional pool. The moment we give permission for this, that can then be fenced off, and those car parking spaces will no longer exist for people using the pool. There was a plan, or there was planning permission for a car park to be put in its place, but in order to be able to do the construction of that car park, they came up with the idea of the temporary car parking, so that people that use the pool will still be able to park in the interim. In order to give this development the go-ahead, as soon as we do that, potentially those car parking spaces will cease to exist for people that use the pool. So although there is planning permission for a temporary car park, surely we need to be making it condition that there is sufficient car parking for the pool before that area is then fenced off and is no longer available for the people that are using the pool. Now, I haven't got a particular problem with normal spaces because there's the Bishop's Road car park, which has got plenty of capacity. But for disabled drivers, there needs to be sufficient parking spaces for disabled drivers so that they can continue to use the regional pool before we allow this site to be used for another purpose.
Yes, Councillor Hussain.
Sorry, I just wanted to say something. I noticed that most of the disabled places for the car park, for disabled spaces, all around the pool area from when we were walking there from the site visit. So they weren't actually in the car park where it's being built, but they were around the pool from what I remember. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, there's some in both, but yeah, okay. Thank you for that. There are some in both locations.
I mean, just to help out here, I believe there is a plan to increase the number of disabled spaces around the pool. But the point I'm trying to make here is, with a planning hat on, we need to make sure that those disabled spaces that are being taken away because of this development are replaced, so that disabled customers of the regional pool are not disenfranchised. That is my point, and I'm, maybe I'm alone here, I don't know, but I think this is something that we need to, protect for the city. I don't think this is the end of the world, but it needs to be a condition that's put in so that the work to increase those disabled spaces around the pool is done before.
We're in questions though, we're not in that part, but I'll let you finish that bit.
So the point is, if it's not already in there, I think that's something that we should be putting in, is the point.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to comment any more on this? Yes.
Yeah, just to confirm, there are some dedicated disabled spaces at the actual regional pool site itself, directly, adjacent to the main entrance.
But there is already, there is disabled, unless a study has been done to say that the number of disabled parking spaces in this car park are no longer required because there isn't the demand for them, well then I need to see evidence of that.
Well, there is no evidence of that, is there? Yeah, do Highways want to pick that up at all? Is there any evidence that there's a surplus, or are we, do you agree there's not enough?
Through the chair, this is Jez Tuttle on behalf of the Highways Authority. Disabled parking wasn't specifically looked at as part of the surveys, I don't think. So I don't think that it drilled into the detail that the council is asking for. So we couldn't confirm that the reduction of disabled parking spaces is or isn't acceptable at this time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jamil, your agenda.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at page 7 of the report, and in particular about the consultation that took place. Now, it says 646 people or persons were consulted, and there was only 4 or 5 responses. Can you give me an idea of how you consulted, who you consulted, or how far you went? Certainly, because myself, when Councillor Iqbal knocked the doors, we had a lot of people who were complaining, so I wouldn't want to go back there and they say they didn't. So if you can give us an idea of how they were consulted.
Through you, Chair. We basically consulted the neighbouring neighbourhood adjacent to the application site. So pretty much the majority of Eastgate and that part of the city. We also consulted anybody that previously made representations on parts phases 1 and 2. And I think that was kind of informed by public engagement, which the agent did as part of the pre-application engagement process. So I was surprised as you at how few contributions that we had as part of the consultation process, but I think perhaps members of the public have gotten used to, or majority have gotten used to the idea that the university is coming forward as part of the, ongoing work. So, but yeah, in terms of, there's no arbitrary way of saying, oh, we consulted everybody within half a kilometre or a kilometre. It was a case of we just consulted predominantly the neighbouring neighbourhood.
Chair, just to follow up, just through you, I'm looking at that because I'm looking at the responses, and it's almost like the people didn't understand what was happening, and they just gave a general comment anyway. So how specific do we give them drawings? Do we just write out a letter, or do we just refer them to the website and say, have a look?
Through you, Chair. So yeah, as part of the neighbour consultation process, we use a standard template pro forma where we describe the description of development. There is a link to viewing the plans and particulars online. We do it in accordance with the Statement of Community Involvement and the Development Management Procedures Order. That's how the consultation, how we have to, that's the framework in terms of how we make, how we consult neighbours as part of the application process. There's also excuse me, there's also contact details on there as well. So if members of the public are unsure, there's a telephone number, and there's instances, not on this one, but other jobs where we do either send PDFs to members of the public or hard plans if they haven't got access to the internet. So we try and be as inclusive as we can do, as and where appropriate.
Just as fun. So we didn't have an open event or where people could come in and give their ideas. It was just purely done by letter.
So as part of the pre-engagement process, the applicant agent Pegasus did a community programme. I think they had a stall set up in, I think it was Queensgate. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was Queensgate Cathedral, thank you. So that to obviously make people aware. We as the local authority did not do a public exhibition because we felt that there was sufficient pre-engagement through the pre-application process.
Else got a question at all? No. Okay, then we'll move to debate then. Who wants to crack on with that? Councillor Hogg.
Thank you. So right out the bat, I'd like to say that, you know, this seems to me a far better use of land than an unwanted and unneeded multi-storey car park, which was what had been previously given permission. I think this is a fantastic increase to the university campus. You know, everything seems to be working really well in that regard. The university campus is growing into being, you know, sort of a jewel in the crown for the city. So I'm completely and utterly behind this 100%. However, there is this issue with specifically the disabled parking around the regional pool that I'm uneasy with, and I really want to make sure that there is a condition placed upon this that situation goes away. Previously, that this site was conditioned that it couldn't go forward or couldn't be started until such time as the temporary car parking was in place. I think essentially that needs to be the condition here, but then I think that possibly what will actually happen is there will be a need to come back to vary that condition to one that is slightly better, in the fact that actually we don't really need that temporary car park at all. That all we really need is to increase the provision for disabled parking in and around the regional pool, and a plan needs to come forward. We just basically need to get our ducks in order on this, and I feel that as it stands, we haven't got our ducks in order. So from my point of view, I'd be more than happy to vote for this application, but I would like a condition placed on it to sort this problem with disabled parking around the regional pool in some shape or form. It may be that we have to go for the, dare I say it, the whole hog of conditioning that the temporary car park that has had previous planning permission needs to be in place before work can start, before this site can be closed off. Personally, I think that temporary car parking is not needed, certainly not in the numbers that came forward. But you know, it is where we are. So I shall leave it to see what my other members of the committee have to say on the subject.
Thank you, Councillor Hogg. Next, Councillor Rush.
Thank you, Chair. I have no issues with this application. I think it's a great enhancement of education for our local students and for students from far, and I will be going with the recommendation by the officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rush. Next. Anybody else want to talk on it at all? Yes, Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, nothing major to add in terms of the positive support for the development. I think I can support Councillor Hogg's proposal for condition should it be agreed by the officers that it's obviously acceptable. The only thing I would say is that I think that should be subject to the assessment of the parking spaces, whether required. So condition, whether the condition can be worded, and obviously Councillor Hogg agrees, that it's along the lines that we carry out the assessment for the need for disabled parking spaces, and if they're required, then we condition that they are replaced somewhere else, because if they're not needed, then obviously the developer can then progress quicker and doesn't have to do that piece of work.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Okay. We're having a bit more of a think about it, just in case. So, yes, Councillor Hiller.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Sharp's hit the nail on the head in that I would be very surprised if any member of this committee would have any objection of substance to this third phase of our city's university, our city's brand new university. I certainly haven't, but I think I would be happy to leave that to the officer's discretion. Regarding parking, it's an important element. I'm not making light of it, and I think Councillor Hogg makes a valid representation regarding parking spaces, either needed or not needed. But I think we would need a definition from the officer on that. Whether that's going to be by way of a condition or what, I don't know. But as is often the case with applications over the years, we have left it to the officer's discretion. And I would be happy to continue that theme. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Anybody else over this side want to speak at all? No. Did you want to come back at all at this point? I mean, I'm not asking you to offer anything. It's up to you. If not, I'm going to go to the vote or a proposal, so it's up to you. Did you want to or not? It's up to you.
So we were just discussing whether or not it's possible to put such a condition on. I think if we were to put a condition on, and it would have to be a negatively worded condition, i.e. no development shall take place, for example, before X number of disabled car parking spaces have been provided to serve the regional pool. I probably need to defer to our legal colleagues for an opinion as to whether that would be an acceptable condition, because it would have to be, there'd have to be a reasonable possibility of it happening, and it wouldn't be in the control of the applicant. It would be in control of Peterborough City Council, I would imagine, who own the regional pool and the land associated with it.
So could this be, I'm putting words into your mouth, that a survey needs to be done to prove that they are necessary, and if they are proved necessary, then, like you were just saying, then it becomes that those spaces must be provided. Sorry.
Got it, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it was introduced early on in the presentation that there are a number of car parks that could potentially service this site in the very close proximity, all of which have, whenever I've been parking there, underused disability bays. So disability is, of course, myriad in its form, but most disabled people that are being driven in cars and utilising those spaces do have, by the term driven, a helper, an assistant of some description. If they are indeed driving their own cars, then one has to assume that they're reasonably able to travel short distances, either by wheelchair or however the mobility is assisted, enabled. So I think we can be getting a little bit narrow-minded in that the disabled facilities have to be immediately on site. The car parks very close to this site do have, in my opinion, do have sufficient disabled parking facilities. Just a thought, Chair.
So just looking at Google satellite images, currently there are 4 disabled spaces in the regional pool car park. There are another 4, I believe, right next to the regional pool itself. And moving further along Bishop's Road to the car park immediately to the west of the phase 1 and phase 2 parts of the uni, it looks like there's about 7 disabled spaces in there. So there are a number of existing disabled spaces within not very close proximity, reasonable close proximity of the regional pool. So plus there's obviously got your non-disabled spaces as well within that car park, and we know that car parks are not full at the moment. There's lots of capacity in the local car parks. So in my opinion, there will remain between the current car park being fenced off and construction starting and the temporary car park being provided to the east of the regional pool, there will be lots of capacity within car parks nearby for both non-disabled and disabled drivers, but obviously it's a judgment for yourselves as
Right, so,
members.
so in your opinion, there's enough spaces? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Thank you.
So,
Councillor Hussain, hang on a minute, I'll come to you.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that, yes, like the others on for this development, we're talking about disabled spaces on the site visits, and the number of times that I've been there, as I said before, there is disabled spaces around the regional pool as well as non-disabled spaces. So rather than putting a condition on this development and delaying it, what I would rather say is we do a study, let it proceed, and if there is a need, then those spaces that are non-disabled around the regional pool be converted into disabled to make it easier for people, and because they're closer, and all the other spaces in the the additional car park can then be used for non-disabled people.
Okay. That wouldn't be a condition we could put on, though, would it? Or would it be, because you're almost saying subject to, and we can't really say that, can we? It's just we'd like that to be done. But we've already had it, and in the officer's expert opinion, there's enough spaces. Yeah? So anyway, I've got Councillor Hogg first, and I'll come to you. Is that right, Councillor Hogg?
I mean, I don't want to put the officers on the spot. I feel that I've kind of introduced this into the scenario, and they're making decisions based on how they feel right now, rather than maybe looking at it in a more controlled way, shall we say, that a report should be put forward. I think clearly did you say there's 4 spaces in the car park that are going to be denied? I think the non-disabled, we can just put that to one side. I think we're fairly established that there is sufficient car parking space within the vicinity, so that the loss of those car parking spaces is not an issue. It's only the disabled places that I've got a particular issue with, and it's whether or not those 4 spaces are demonstratively needed in that area. Now, it may well be that it can be provided by turning what is not currently a disabled spot into a disabled spot near the pool. But so what I'm asking is if we could just put to leave it with officers to go away, and if they need to put a condition in, then so be it. I think the thing in terms of the temporary car park, the only reason that car park was given permission and was sought was because of the car park that was going to go on this site. Without that happening now, the temporary car park is not going to happen. In fact, I've been told that there are really no plans to pursue that further because of the cost element and the need for car parking spaces. So I don't want to kind of make a decision based on something that may or may not happen. So essentially what I'm saying here is that we need to give latitude to the officers to go away and look at this particular issue, and if need be, interject a condition if it needs to have one. I would be happy with that.
I actually don't think we're going to be allowed to do that, because that's not before us. We can put a condition on, but we can't say go away and make a condition. We wouldn't be allowed to do that.
The condition would be that the four disabled places that are currently in this car park need to be provided elsewhere, right, unless it can be demonstrated that they are no longer needed.
Okay. Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I think officers, he just does research, a search on the Google map, and he's identified there are spaces around, which I think add up to about 20-25, if I'm correct. So he is speaking with evidence that there is evidence that we've got space around. And we've got to look at it from the point of view that we need to progress on this application as well. You know, we've got to balance it out. I think Councillor Hogg has made a valid point, yes, and the highway have told us that they've not looked into it because it's not an issue, but considering that the car park space is not used fully, I'm sure disabled or not disabled people will be able to find a space in the car park. And considering that you've done a search on the Google map, there are spaces around the pool as well as on the main road, I think we should be happy with that and proceed.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Sorry, I've got Councillor Hiller first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think That's a very valid point that's just been made, Councillor Iqbal. If you take a step back and look at disabled parking space provision in the city and the positioning of that provision, invariably the disabled spaces are some distance away from perhaps where the disabled persons actually want to go. And I think that if you look at St Peter's Road, there are a number of disabled bays there, but they're not, they're to park the vehicle and then the disabled people, either helped or otherwise, get out of those vehicles and then go to wherever it is they want to go. They don't actually have to necessarily be right by the door of their final destination. And I think it's laudable to suggest that officers look at the provision of disabled spaces. I think you can be a little bit prescriptive in that there has to be 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever. But in my experience and potentially other people's experiences, when I visited these car parks in the city centre, frequently, it's rare. I find it very rare that the disabled parking spaces are completely utilised. There's invariably spaces left, the Carhaven car park is a good example where there are disabled spaces dotted around that car park. Nobody shops. Nobody visits offices in Carhaven car park. It's outside the Carhaven car park. And what we're saying here is a similar scenario, is that there are car parks with disabled provision currently in the very close proximity to this new, or the potentially new development. Chair, I think that's sufficient. I think that is a provision that will be used and will be used effectively, as it is currently in the existing car parks for other places. So I really do think that we're sort of drilling down on this and focusing on something that potentially is not an issue. It's not a problem currently, and I don't think it should be, and certainly not to the detriment of this scheme going ahead. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, okay. And then if anybody else has got anything to say, I'm going to go for a proposal because I think we've got both sides now of that. Anything else anybody want to debate? No? Do you want anything else, officers? Are you happy at that point? Yeah. You've done all you want to say. Okay. Proposal time then. I've got Councillor Iqbal, please, for your proposal.
I propose that we support the officer's recommendation.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Hiller, yes? Yes, Councillor Hiller seconded. So we've got a proposal and a seconder. So we'll
if I might just, Chair, in seconding that proposal, let's look at 646 initial consultations, of which there were 2 objections. 646 consultations,
yeah, that's
2 objections. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we've got a proposal and we've got a seconder, so we'll go to the vote. All those in favour of Councillor Iqbal's proposal? No, more than that. And against? And abstention? 2 abstentions. Okay, in that case, the application is approved. Thank you very much. Okay. Sorry? No, none against. No against, 2 abstentions. Okay, then. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for the debate. Good debate there. We'll move on now to item 6, which is the quarterly appeals report. And Sylvia, bless her, is not well, so she won't be presenting on that. So you're going to present on that again, on the appeals report, when you're ready. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. This appeals report covers the period between July and September 2022, and our performance remains good, and it meets the government target of no more than 10% of appeals being lost over a rolling 2-year period compared to all decisions made. It's split into majors, which we've lost 0%, and non-majors 0.77%, and that's set out in Appendix 2. in the agenda. And our performance this quarter is consistent with the previous 2 years of decisions. So during this period, there were 9 appeal decisions issued by the Planning Inspectorate. And in summary, the outcome was 1 appeal was withdrawn, and this was because the inspector found no legal basis for the appeal. This was an unusual hedgerow appeal where the hedge had been removed. And this is being followed up through the enforcement process. 3 appeals were the outcome of committee decisions, and of these the inspector agreed with the committee on 2 appeals, and I believe the one that was overturned was one which officers had recommended refusal, and obviously the committee went with the officer recommendation. I think that's one that could have gone either way, so members were reasonable in the decision that was made. 5 were the outcome of delegated decisions. Of these, the inspector agreed with the officers on 4 occasions, so another good result. And a summary of the appeal decisions can be found at Appendix 1 in the agenda. So in terms of lessons learnt from these appeals, there are 2 examples to bring to members' attention. So the appeal against the committee decision, actually I referred to the wrong decision there. The appeal against the committee decision was to refuse a footpath and cycleway at Loves Lane, Sutton. This was allowed by the inspector. He placed weight on the safeguarding of the route in the local plan. He found the proposal would not affect the character of the village or cause significant pressures from visitors, vehicles or parking. He did not believe that behaviour or speed of cyclists would impact on amenity of residents. Several conditions were attached to the decision to control and minimise the effects of the proposals. And again, that's within the Appendix 1, paragraph 3.7 of the report. In the appeal decision against the provision of 2 holiday lets at Black House Farm, the inspector refused the appeal. In doing so, he supported the committee's concerns about highway safety impacts arising from increased vehicle movements on a narrow road with limited visibility onto the fast-moving Crowland Road. Highways had objected to the proposals, paragraph 3.8 of the report, and the second item on Appendix 1, that's explained. So both decisions are attached in full, Appendix 3 and 4. Sorry if that sounded a bit clunky, by the way. I'm reading this verbatim from Sylvia's notes.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much. Questions then? Anybody got any questions on it at all? Councillor Hogg.
So Grange Road was also one of the committee decisions, I believe, where we refused. Is that right? Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
that was the one I was referring to, but yeah. Then further down, it was referring to a different one, so apologies for the confusion there.
Yeah. As it is, I don't agree with this decision, but then he's the next level up and he does, so that's the way it goes. We didn't make any mistake, did we? You know, we weren't unfair, so I think committee took one opinion and he took another, so we just have to accept that, don't we? Which is good. We've not got a lot of costs or anything like that. We've not been unfair, which shows us to have some sort of training issue. So I think the decisions are generally, well, they're all excellent, really, a majority of times. And I think the officers' decisions are good too, because the rate is extremely low, isn't it, of appeals that are being won. But it happens. So could you please pass back to obviously the whole department via Sylvia, if necessary, our thanks for excellent performance again and for your help in helping us to make the right decisions, hopefully, most of the time. It would have been more of a concern if we'd have sat there and thought all the committee decisions were being appealed and we were losing them all. We knew we'd got a problem. So thanks very much. Do appreciate it. Thank you. Anybody else got any questions or comments on that at all? No? Okay, good. Well, that brings this meeting to a close. And thank you very much for everybody, for your time, officers, for all your help and advice. And have we gone off air now?
No.
That brings this meeting to a close. So if you could just tell me when we're gone.